Okay, everyone.
Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Hurry up, you cows. Get on in there. Welcome, everybody, to the Crete Historical Society's Dairy Night. We're going to start off. Phyllis has got a few announcements here, and then we'll get into our program. So, Phyllis Monk's the president of the Crete Historical Society.
First of all, I'd like to tell you, is there an empty seat there or no? Oh, Ed's there. Okay. We'll get a few more chairs out.
Phyllis, you want the mic?
Ready?
No, I think, can you all hear me?
Back here, there's some.
Okay,
Right there.
Oh,
She takes it.
all right, keep coming in.
Over by Tommy.
I want to tell you a little bit, well, we have this wonderful Crete Historical Society, and we've been doing the last year lots of projects, and you're going to talk about that, right? Okay. And so on April 18th, we're going to take a road trip for the Crete Historical Society, but it's only for members. So if you want to be on that road trip, you can join the Historical Society tonight. And then I need your email and I will tell you where we're going. But Ed Gensler is here. He's our treasurer and he's the one that tries to give us full effort to getting people to be members of the Crete Historical Society. And so the April 18th is a wonderful program. It's not really a program, but it is over on the west side of Crete. And Ray Maddox spent a year and a half creating the replica of the Hemker farm I own. Hemker is here too. And it's wonderful. It's huge. And there's Ray. He put it together. So it is wonderful. But as I said, there's only limited room in his garage. And so you need to be, it's for members only of the Historical Society. So you can join tonight. It's only $10. Very minuscule amount. And we would welcome you to be a member of our Crete Historical Society. Also, in May, we will go back to our usual third Thursday night of each month where we meet at the town hall at 7 o'clock. And usually we have a show and tell. You can take this. We have a show and tell, so certain members or anyone can bring something that they found around their house or whatever relating to Crete history. And we've had some real doozies, you know, the really fun things. So we're at the Crete Town Hall, not next month, but beginning May again, the third Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock. We also have the Crete Remember books for sale tonight. They're $10 a piece. And see me, I'll be over there after Tim's program to sell a few more because the two creameries that Carol Treebold wrote about are in the volume 5. The Crawley Dairy is in another one, and of course, the Maple Lane Dairy, I think is in the 4th, and the Crawley is in volume 3. And there's so much more to learn about Crete. In each of the books, there are a number of true stories that, and Carol did most of them, and I did a few of them. And so we have them here tonight, and you will not be disappointed if you buy one or any of them, or all of them. So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck Eckel, who just is going to speak for a minute about something that's going to happen in Crete. Just
You doubled my time, you told me 30 seconds. Yeah, my name's Chuck Eckel, and this is more of a heads up for the Historical Society members. In our next meeting, we'll discuss it more, but kind of capping off the Memorial Day parade and ceremonies, the first Crete cruise night. I have invited, and hopefully we'll have representation from the GHQ Military Museum. Guyac is supposed to be bringing his mobile military museum, and then the Veterans Garage will bring hopefully 2 or 3 of their restored vehicles. So it will kind of have us be able to once again celebrate our veterans and their service. And this is basically, as I say, a heads up to the Historical Society that I asked Phyllis if maybe we could do something that would go in conjunction with that also. So I'm looking forward to having a rousing first Crete cruise night.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah.
My name's Tim Kiepenbrink, and in the Historical Society for a few years. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say Kiepenbrink's my name, Crete history's my game. My dad used to say that all the time. I'm probably lesser of a historian than some of the other folks in the room here, but spent a lot of time with learning Crete history. We've got a lot of different artifacts up here we'll talk about tonight. But I think what I'd like to talk about to start with is probably since the mid-1990s, the dairy farms in Crete had started to diminish, and there's not too many of them around anywhere anymore. I believe there might only be one in Crete Township, and that's out at Clemmy Road and Exchange. There's a dairy farm out there. I think that might be the only one around. But you couldn't drive too far in Crete Township without seeing cows in the field. And you know, that's a testament to how important the dairy business was to people in Crete and every community. They all had the same interest in livelihood, farming. Most of them had dairy cattle, other livestock, that type of thing. But we're focusing on dairies tonight. And if you think back, you know, people's grandparents or great-grandparents, they had dairy farms. One of the earliest statements that we've got about the dairy farms around here was in the 1873 Will County Atlas. And that was a huge book that had pictures of different homes and places and businesses throughout the county. And one of the pictures in the book was this picture here of the John O. Kiepenbrink farm. Now, I'm not telling you about Kiepenbrink because he's my last name. He happened to have a picture in the book, and it used to hang in the library here, but now we've got it out here to display. This house still stands. It's out by 394 Richton Road. You know where the World Bible League is out there? It's the house directly west of there. That's the same house. The barn is barely hanging together, but it's still there. All these other small buildings are long gone. And there used to be over here a brick building that was a cheese factory, which has since fallen down probably 10 years ago. But just speaking to the industrious nature of the people that came here, John O. Kiepenbrink got off the boat in 1849. Just got married shortly after that. And this atlas was from 1873. So in 23 years or thereabouts, maybe less, because he had to get his feet on the ground, get a job somewhere, he ended up starting a dairy business, making cheese and that type of thing. He set up his farm place there. He bought it from another guy that had purchased the property. And Bill Muirhead's not here tonight, I don't think, but there's another building sitting behind the house right now on that property that is probably one of the oldest buildings in Will County, at least this end of the county. And it looks like kind of a Cape Cod, not Cape Cod, English.
That's a summer kitchen.
Yeah, it's a summer kitchen now, but I think that was the original house on the property before this house was built, around 1873-ish. And that house, I can't think of the people's name here, but they were English people, and they had built this house. It looked like kind of a, I don't know if Cape Cod's the right thing. It's got the typical roof line of that style house. They physically picked that house up and moved it back and built this house in its place, but the foundation inside this house is the same size as the old house. So anyhow, all these people that came here, they worked and they worked and they worked. And they buy land from the government or other speculators that bought the land and then sold it to them. The going interest rate at the time was about 33% compared to what's the interest rate for buying a home now? 4 or 5, whatever it is. that's some pretty steep interest. That's what Willard Wood had to pay when he bought the ground for the village of Crete, 33% interest. So that's pretty steep. But these guys worked, built up, look at the size of that operation going there. I mean, that's a lot of stuff going on there, and I don't know how many people he had working for him. I wish I had more information about John O. I've been trying to find some of his, if he had any paperwork or anything that, you know, bill of sales or anything that he might have had. I just haven't been able to find anything. But these guys really had to work to get this all set up and running. He sold the cheese and whatnot into Chicago, and over in Monee on Stunkel Road, there's another guy. There's a guy out in Frankfurt, I think his name was Gunther, and he had a dairy business, dairy farm for cheese and that type of thing also. So there's a couple of bigger operations in the area, and Stunkel Road is where, this is Richard Stunkel right here. You raise your hand. He's got some information about Stunkel Crossing. That's right where the railroad tracks is, and Stunkel Road, or University Parkway they call it now. But Mr. Stunkel, not you, probably your uncle or great uncle?
Great uncle.
Great uncle. That goes back a ways. Great uncle talked the railroad into putting a milk stop on the IC right at that intersection there. Probably that's why it got called Stunkel Road, because it was Stunkel Crossing.
Well, the railroad did it.
Okay.
Yeah, the Governor State named it Stunkel Road, but the railroad named it Stunkel Crossing. They
Okay.
still do today.
Okay, so there is all these obscure old stops that the trains made still have the same crossing names, or the stop that they call them. So that was an industrious guy that set up a place for all the farmers to bring their milk to get it into the city. John O, he had to put it in a wagon and cart it up there, so that, and I imagine in town, when we had the CNI Railroad came in here, there was probably milk stops here for guys to send their milk in maybe cans kind of like that. So anyhow, we've got a number of people here tonight that have been in the dairy business here, and we're going to talk about farming and dairies and creameries, and then we've got a whole list of other things here. If you look at your program, you can kind of follow along here. But we'll start out with the dairies here. The Maple Lane Dairy was probably the biggest one in Crete here, and that was out on Exchange Street. There's a pile of rocks right now there. It used to be the video store. Before that, it was Maple Lane Dairy. And so Bob Kramer is here. His family ran the dairy for how many years, Bob?
20.
20 years. And who owned it before you guys?
Stallings.
Stallings. Was it called Maple Lane at that time?
It was.
Okay. So Maple Lane Dairy's been, what year do you think they started? Any idea?
Well, we got there Christmas Eve of 45, so they had it for the 20 years prior to that.
So 1925, it might have roughly started then, so, okay. That was a big operation for town here, and there's a few people here that drove milk trucks for Maple Lane Dairy. There's Roger Becker and Wendy Becker Cooper over there. Their dad was a milkman over there. When I had a paper out, I'd stop in there on real cold mornings to warm up. But dairies are usually cold, so I don't know if there was made any sense to stop in there to warm up. It was cold in there. I should have stopped in there in the summer on a hot day. But Bob remembers me coming in there, and some of the guys that were working in there, I just stopped for a minute because I had things to do and kept on going. So, you guys, did you have a fleet of milk trucks that the dairy owned?
We had, back then, it was naturally, as many people in this room know, we had home delivery.
Right.
And we had 10 for that, and then we had 2 wholesale.
Okay, so they went to
One
the
was for
businesses?
general restaurants and grocery stores,
Okay.
and the other wholesale route ran just a full 24-foot box full of half gallons down in that Tino institution.
Okay. Okay. I remember I helped Jack Crowley do a load of milk one time. I never worked so hard in my life. Jack was up at 5 to pick me up, and I think we got home about 10, not in the morning. And I was shorter than I am already, which is bad enough. My wife's hoping I'll grow a little more yet, but I don't think that it's going to happen. I had to reach up and get these crates of milk off the back of the semi, and there's 4 gallons in a crate. And what's a gallon of milk weigh? 8 pounds? 9 pounds?
8 pounds.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I was dead beat by the end of the night. So, anyhow, Maple Lane Dairy. Yeah. Question.
Stallings started in 1925.
Bob, you're right on. Stelling started Maple Lane Dairy in 1925. See, that's out of Crete Remembered books. So there's a lot more information in that one little tidbit there, so they're on the table. Help yourself when you get out of here. We'll just take a minute here. Roger and Wendy, I don't know if you have anything you want to chime in here, but anybody recognize what this thing here is? Okay, this was a box that was on your back porch. And front porch too. We had ours on the back porch. We made the guy walk around the back of the house. We weren't thinking. And this actually says right on the front, embossed in the metal, Maple Lane Dairy. I was looking for one of those for the longest time, and I ran into Wendy, and they were cleaning out their mom and dad's estate, and I said, "Do you have one of them boxes over there?" She said, "Well, my dad's got a whole bunch of boxes, but I don't know if he's got that." Sure enough, they were good enough to donate this to the Crete Historical Society. Your dad, Harold Becker. He, if you want me to tell a little bit about one of his things that he did when he was on his milk route, if he'd see a house that had some new diapers hanging out in the back line, he said, "Yeah, there's a new customer right there." So they interviewed him here in, when was this, 1986 or something? 1984. So they interviewed him, had a picture of his milk truck. I don't see too many milk trucks around anymore, but I think the closest thing we've got to seeing a milk truck is right on 394. When you go up near Sauk Trail, there's Her and Son Truck Building Company or something. They've got a couple old milk type trucks out in front there, so that's kind of neat to see those. But those things are workhorses, so I don't see too many of them around anymore. Anyhow, when they drop off your milk, lo and behold, you get a gallon of milk. Got a plastic handle on there. That was kind of a later innovation there. I've got a bunch of different size bottles for Maple Lane and a few other dairies here, and I see you've even got a plastic cottage cheese container here. Is that yours?
Cardboard
Yes.
stopper.
Yes.
Cardboard stopper is out.
Yeah, right. Yeah, here's a cottage cheese container. When we were all in school in lunchroom, we'd get a carton of milk. Did you guys ever have cartons of milk?
Absolutely.
Okay. We need to look for some of those. There's none
We had
around.
those pint glass bottles first,
Okay.
went out to the schools, and then actually, when it went to cartons.
Yeah. And so you guys had the gallon cartons too? Did they? I think they had gallon cartons at some
No, we
point.
had half gallons.
Okay, half
As big
gallons.
as we went.
Okay. And did you have skim milk and what's all the other
Chocolate
stuff?
milk, buttermilk,
Buttermilk.
made it all.
Where's Anthony? He likes buttermilk. No?
Culture buttermilk.
Cottage cheese. Any other dairy products besides that?
Well, we had butter, half and half. Turned around and did some variations of hops, as they would be today.
Okay.
For about 90% sugar and the rest water.
Were those trucks refrigerated, the milk trucks?
Yes, they were insulated well, let's put it that way. They were called Divcos, 90% of them.
Okay.
Except for Harold Becker's Independence, he had an international.
Okay.
But he had an idea where we would have a ice shaver going 24 hours a day, and they would load up on top of their cases with ice,
Oh,
shaved
okay.
ice.
Okay.
And then in the wintertime, a lot of people wouldn't know it, but just putting a candle in the back of that insulated truck, they could load them at 2 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and they'd be fine when they took off at 5, 6 o'clock.
Learn new things all the time. I know Harold Becker, he delivered eggs and other things too, didn't he? Did you guys do any eggs?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so all the supplies that you need in a dairy counter at a grocery store.
Not all of it was made by the individual distributors, but it's like we used Land O'Lakes butter from day one.
Okay.
And they
Well,
come
you know-
out from Chicago with a truckload.
Did you get your milk, raw milk, from the local dairy farmers here?
We started out with 10-gallon cans the first year or two. I can't be specific because I was
Is that what
only,
this is, 10 gallons?
well,
Pretty close.
That's an
Then.
age.
the That's an 8.
I shouldn't be asking you about this. This is a Prolly dairy can. This is Prolly, this is 10 gallons?
I've been looking for one for.
Well, come in, you saw one now, see? It's embossed in the front there, John H. Prolly. How about that? Well, 8 gallon, okay.
If you look at where the number is, there's like a bronze plate, and every farmer had their own name on it. And if you bought cans from another person, it would heat the solder, take it off, and you put your own bronze plate on it to identify your can.
This can here belongs to Arthur Scheibe, Crete, Illinois. He had a milk permit number 7853, it looks like. So, yeah, that was common to have those cash pumps. You know, I probably shouldn't bring this up here, but, you know, we've all made it. These cans here are plated with something. Now, you know where I'm going with this, right? What on earth was in those cans that was, you know, healthy to drink the milk out of? I don't know. Are they stainless steel? I don't think so. Anyway,
It was healthy because we drank out of it.
I know, we're all here to prove that it was good. It was good for us at that time. So, anyhow, just an interesting thought there.
Not they went to the cans, they went to, the state made everybody get bulk stainless steel tanks that they wanted to maintain their Class A license. And at that point, there was bulk tanks on the farm, stainless steel, and then you notice the, probably 24 foot bulk stainless steel pickups that people like the Niemeyers in Indiana,
I was just
they
gonna
went around
mention
to all
that.
the farms
Yeah.
and collected it.
Did you have a large truck that went around to the farms, or people bring their milk into you, or both?
We did for 2 years,
Okay.
but then we did it the Niemeyer way, hired out.
And Mrs. Prolly, how did you guys do it? Did you go out to farms and get milk?
My daughter has, yeah. Jackson, well, Elk Country, I don't know. It started out when the first Mr. Prolly, John Prolly came. He picked it up himself, started out that way, and then as it progressed, he got farms, and had to go out and pick it up with wagons, and then in cans like that. And then as it went on, they took it in tanks, they pasteurized it when they built the plant. They pasteurized it here in Crete, put it in tanks, took it to Chicago and places like Maple Lane and different places, right? And Dixie Dairy, I think I might find the right one.
The Prolly Dairy was on the south end of town on
South end
Burglar
of
Road,
town.
right? East of Smoky Joe's.
Smoky Joe's.
Was that building bigger than it is now?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought. I saw some pictures, looked like it was half again as long. Colleen is great-great-granddaughter.
Right.
You want to play your little video thing here?
I have some pictures and stuff.
I think you should show a picture of there.
Okay, this will be the Prolly Dairy here.
What is that, Colleen?
Hold on.
Oh. That was your business card, I guess.
Well, just, you want me to show? This was my great-great-grandfather. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. His name was John H. Crowley. He came here, he came to Crete in 1915 from Riverdale area. And in the Riverdale area, he actually had a small store, and he'd run out to the countryside to pick up like milk and eggs and butter to sell in his grocery store. Well, I think a lot of his customers and stuff were out this way because he came to Crete in 1915 then. At the time, he was married Matilda Crowley. He had 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. But anyways, he came to this area and started about a milk route. And I guess the milk route was only $50 at the time, and that included picking up 15 cans of milk from various farmers, if I have my information correct. And he bought the milk route for $50, and he put $10 down to finance the rest. Well, eventually one of the most modern ways at the time, I guess, was to go and he got trucks that were actually insulated or whatever, and he was one of the first ones in the area to deliver milk in one of those insulated trucks. And I guess this is an example of one. I'm not positive, but I think that is my great-grandfather. they would actually just pick up cans of milk from the different farmers, which they would just put in the well to keep it cold, and then they put it to a distributor to a place, and then fill it in one of those trucks and take it to Chicago. Here's another picture. This is in 1927, actually in front of the maintenance garage, which is across the street from Smoky Joe's over on Route 1. It's a vacant lot now, or to the west, sorry. If you ever just park at Smoky Joe's and park in their overflow parking lot, you can actually still see the foundation, which I thought was kind of cool.
Was that a church building that was moved from South Holland? That might have been an old church building. Yeah.
Years ago,
They
you
moved
could
that.
kind of tell.
Yeah. That's been down for quite a few years.
I remember when it was torn down, I was like 5 or 6. And then, well, actually in 1925, then John Crowley, who started the dairy, he was killed by his own truck. He was on the running board, and what had happened, I guess he was wearing overalls or something in the hammer loop that you keep your hammer in or whatever. He tried to jump off, and William Meddig was actually driving at the time. He accidentally ran over him. So unfortunately, at the age of 43, he was killed. But then his son, Harold Crowley, took over. That would be my great-grandfather. He was the second generation. But then in 1927, they actually started getting pretty big, and they built the processing plant here. This is actually where Closet Collectibles is. It's on the corner of like Wood Street and Burville, right behind Smoky Joe's. And then a couple years later, or 1935, they actually grew and bought a milk separator machine, which I guess made like powdered milk, and they would sell that to like the stockyards for feeding purposes for their animals. Here's a picture of some of the workers in front of what I believe is the processing plant. I'm not 100% sure, but my grandmother thought in the middle was Harold Crowley, and then also George Kirk, the King Senowitz. Did I pronounce that correctly, Anna? Senowitz. He was like Hank was actually one of the first employees and one of the longest ones that worked there.
I think George Kirk worked for Maple Lane too, didn't he?
Quite a few years ago.
I remember seeing him in there. He had his white uniform and cap on.
Going back a little bit, so at the plant that I had showed you, that's where they actually pasteurized and separated the cream, because they would go to the farmers and pick up, and then he would sell it, either put it on the train in the early years to go to Chicago, or he'd actually sell it to local dairies. That included Maple Lane right here in Crete, Grants, Purity, and Margot creameries as well, or dairies. And then in their heyday, they actually had up to 18 employees, 16 tank trucks that would deliver to the different dairies, and then he had 20 farmers. And then my grandfather took over it. Here's a picture of Viola, and then Harold's is the second generation. He's in the middle there, and then my grandfather, the little boy. He took over it, but he was pretty young. They sold it pretty young. In November 1952, it was sold to Capital Dairy. And but my grandpa still did stuff in the dairy business. He sold milk creamery packages, which is a brand of cooling machines that he would actually sell to farmers. Then he also had different milk routes, some in Wisconsin, and then he also sold packaged milk to different institutions like hospitals and stuff, and schools.
Colleen, I don't think the Historical Society has a copy of your disc here, so I'm gonna ask you if we get a copy of that.
Sure. And then I came across this the other day too. That was kind of funny.
Yeah, Oriole.
I was thinking the same thing. We need pictures. We need those
Who
pictures.
knows what the name of the girls softball team in Crete was back in the 50s?
Orioles, right?
The Orioles. The Orioles. So I don't know which came first, the softball team or the telephone exchange, because before that it was 4 digits. All right, you got anything else on the or that is?
Yeah. Well,
Okay, well,
back
thank you for the
one
presentation. Good to see what's there. That, again, is right where Closet Collectibles is at Wood Street, Burville Road.
And it's funny that it was actually sold to my mother-in-law's cousin.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, how about that? Okay. We can't go by without saying something about Dixie Dairy. That was in Beecher. Anybody from Beecher here tonight? Okay. there's a couple Dixie Dairy bottles here, a couple little creamers. Dixie started out in Beecher, then it might have been in Chicago Heights, and then it was in Gary. I don't know if it's even still in business anymore.
No.
The building's still in Gary's.
I know where you're talking, right by the railroad tracks and the cemetery? Okay. Okay, so they might have had a facility there too, so.
The building in Gary still exists with the bottle's still on top of it.
Their bottling and processing was done in Gary.
All right, so,
Right behind the
some,
Eskimo ice cream shop
Yeah.
in Chicago Heights.
yeah, most of the Dixie Dairy bottles, the older ones, say Beecher, Illinois, and then later on, they said Beecher and Gary. So, the comment was mentioned here a couple times about pasteurized and homogenized. When did that take place? When did that start being a requirement, I guess you could say? Any idea?
Well, it was always a requirement, as I remember. We bought it in '46 roughly, and at that time, it was a matter of heating the raw milk in 150-gallon stainless steel tanks. And then, somewhere along the line, Majani and Company developed a short time. We'd have a 4 by 18-inch steel plates, like bullet holes in it, and you'd have 100 of those, and you would tighten them down. And the difference between that is you had to wait for the milk to heat up in the tank and be pasteurized. Where with short time, you could just run the milk through those 100 plates in a matter of a couple minutes, and you'd be live.
Like a big heat exchanger type thing. Okay, good, good. So that's some of the rules and regulations. I know I drank a few cups of milk that came right out of the tank. I'm looking at you, Ione. That was better.
That was the best way to go.
That's right. That's,
Raw milk.
yeah, raw milk, yeah, that's right, that's right. So anyhow, we covered Dixie Dairy. There was oodles of other dairies around. I got a couple other bottles here. Did any of you dairies ever have brown bottles? Do you remember seeing any brown bottles? I don't know if that had special milk in them.
There was a company up on the north side, north suburbs, that had a brown bottle. They used it for specialty milks like goat milk, for Inslack when it was invented for babies. They all came out in brown bottles.
I've got one, but I didn't think to bring it tonight.
It was Brook something.
Okay. There's all kinds of dairies. You Google milk bottles on eBay or something, you probably spend 3 weeks looking at all of them. I've done that a time or two, not quite for 3 weeks, but so we covered the dairies. There was also some creameries, which probably did a lesser volume of business than dairies because they probably didn't go out and travel as far. We've got Acorn Creamery, was at that one intersection of Exchange and Burrville and Stony Island. There's that kind of on the S-curve out there on the other side of the expressway. There's a creamery there, Acorn Creamery. Bemis Creamery. Do you know where Bemis is at?
Southwest corner of Bemis and State Line.
Okay, yeah, it's on the state line in Indiana, probably what, 2 miles south of Exchange, roughly? Okay, so there was one there. We had the Moni Creamery. That's the focal point of the Moni Historical Society's building that they got a project on. You see Mr. Stuffle here's got a Moni Historical Society shirt on, so glad to have you here in Crete tonight. You guys got a good project going there.
It's a big, expensive one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, since we're talking about that, you're gonna use that maybe as a museum or something?
It's gonna be, but right now, the architect says to bring it up to code, it'd take $500,000.
Yeah, so, well, I've been bugging this one guy right here about getting a museum in Crete. And, you know, you gotta clean all those stones off. That's all limestone that
I
building.
think we're gonna just do a small portion of it that fits code, and then we'll do the others as we get cash.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna take a while.
Well, the Historical Society would really like to land someplace. We've probably got as big a collection as any historical society around here. We just don't have a public venue for people to view it and enjoy it, so keep that in mind. All of our governmental entities around here have gotten a letter from the Historical Society of our interest in a building. And there's a bunch of projects in the works that, you know, maybe there'd be a space in one of those buildings to put a corner for a nice museum, so. Mayor Einhorn, I'm just mentioning that to you for a while. He's gonna avoid me like the plague after this. I'm publicly harassing him here. There was a Schrage Creamery, I guess. That's out on Exchange Street near the F Men's Hall. There's a farm place that was probably a quarter mile outside of the F Men's Hall, and I believe they had milk that they sold or a milk route. Ray Mollers said that he thought that they had a family one right at the corner of Bridgeton Road and Chicago Road there on the west side of the tracks. That farm place is gone now. And then Carol and Waylon Treebolt over there. Was that your grandfather that had a milk route? And
Our dad started the milk route when he was 15. With a can and a quart, and they just went around and took from the can and did people first.
Oh, okay.
That was the way it started, and then eventually it got so much that we had to buy from probably milk into, and we were in business 15 years. Then it was sold to Dixie, and Carl Treble, our uncle, he kept on with Dixie then and delivered milk, home delivered milk.
so you guys, your great grandfather was it?
Yeah.
Grandfather. He went out with a ladle, and the people probably had a milk can like this that they kept in their basement to keep it cool, and the ladle would fill up the can, so they'd have milk in the house. Then a little bit later, instead of having a cart with a horse, then there'd be the dairies that would have trucks and make deliveries. Quite a few dairies started going, and they all got their milk from the farm places that were local. So we're going to talk about farm places here too now a little bit. We've got a number of people. Go ahead, Carol.
There's a picture in my board over here of my dad with a
Oh, the milk cart. Look at that.
with a milk wagon.
You'll have to come by here after a while. It's the top picture here in the center. He's got his horse and wagon.
People have been asking me whatever happened to the wagon. When I was researching my material, all of a sudden I come across the following little article. The one horse shay, all unrecognized, has been in the midst for or low. In these many years, and there remains mere new testimony of the fact that they lie in a tumbling heap near the streetcar tracks of Vincent's Avenue. In other words, Treble's milk wagon, which has served the people of Crete so long, suddenly collapsed without warning one day last week, dropping with great havoc its last load, and freeing the old gray, which had been a faithful companion so long, as the milk is now delivered by a shiny new auto truck.
So there's that significant moment in time where we switch from horses to motor vehicles. That's pretty good. So I go back to these guys that built these farm places and built up these businesses handling all kinds of milk products. This guy, John O., had 4 sons. And right around his farm place, you see a balcony on the house there. He could stand up on the balcony, and he gave each of his 4 sons a farm. He could go up there and see what they were up to, make sure they were working. And I think that was his middle name, was Work, along with all these other people that have done this. Anyhow, where the coal store is, there was a Piefenbrink son farm there. Marvin Piefenbrink was the latest farmer there. He had a dairy operation there. His barn burned down, I think, in 1951 or so. And so they built another one. It was one of those new modern-looking things that looked like somebody'd have in their toy box as a kid with cows and stuff. So that was a farm there. That was a Piefenbrink farm. There was another one farther north down Bullbrick Road, about where Taco Bell is. Then across from where Marvin Piefenbrink was, his nickname was Pete. Across to the south of Bridgeton Road was another son, had a house. And then a little bit farther east, it was the Hemker farm. And that's east of the coal store. And Paul and Martin Hemker were the two farmers over there, and Iona's here tonight. She's Martin's wife. They ran a dairy operation, and I spent a lot of time out there. I've had a little bit of manure on my boots, but not nearly what those guys had. But they had a barn there, and that barn, what year do you think that barn was built, Iona? Any idea? It could have been 1880, 1870, somewhere around there possibly. So I remember being out there, and they had the cows out in the cow yard or pasture, and they'd walk up one ramp that they had up the hill to the barn, and they'd milk the cows and run them down the other ramp. Then they added on another little set of stanchions there, as I recall, on running east and west, so they could milk more cows. And I went out there one time, and then they had a roof they had put over this area where the ramps were going up into the barn. These are two brothers. They did all this work themselves. They put this roof over where the ramps went into the barn, dug out some of the hillside that was there, and then probably used that for storing hay or even feeding the cattle. They'd be out of the weather. And as their herd grew, they put a cattle feeder trough in there and built a silo. Now, we haven't talked about the feed that cows eat, but Dave, most you probably have a better handle on it than I do, because you've got more manure on your boots than I do. You've been around there. What do cows eat?
Well, I mean, years ago, the staples in the area, most of the farmers grew oats as your staple with corn. They used the oat straw for bedding, stuff like that. You had, of course, your hay, alfalfa, clover, timothy, orchard grass type hay mixes that they would feed. Originally, we see so many acres of soybeans now. So at one time, soybean was actually made into hay, forage, rather than for the actual soybean stuff. Then, we're talking way back. There was so many different types of things that we don't grow in this area anymore that was used as those staples. And then as time progressed, 30s, 40s, 50s, they started large feed companies, Marina, other ones, started doing the research and adding supplements, protein supplements, soybean meal, all kinds of different things to raise not only production but butter fat as far as that goes. But some of the largest staples were the oats and the corn, and they grew it, like corn was either the actual grain or silage or even stover. Probably quite a few people remember Whalen. Whalen's last year, you put some shocks up out in the field.
Yeah.
Early 80s, they used to store it, not only chop it into their silos, but then they used to store it in bundles. You had a corn binder that put so many stalks into a pipe, and then you stored it on the field like a TV type deal thing, and then they would bring it in during the course of the winter and run it through a grinder and stuff for corn silage and stuff.
How many of you remember seeing the corn shocks out by their farm? You put them up, huh? Well, you told me that your parents still farmed with horses when I first talked to you.
When I was 10 years old, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And as it progressed even farther, then it's going more scientific. If any of you ever get a chance to go through that Fair Oaks Dairy down there, virtually they feed it just a total mixed ration all the time for meat production. But back in the early days, everybody grew their own feed, grew their own corn, grew their own bedding, as far as that goes. And then, of course, in the reverse effect, spread all the manures, fertilizer, and so on and so forth.
Manure is one of the topics here, so you would cover that.
There's a lot of BS that's going on.
Yeah.
No better guy to spread it than you, Dave.
Nothing to off.
Sam, I don't know if you're gonna go how far you had milking power, but like, when those farms were in effect, you had quite a few hired hands, and each one of them was given so many cows to milk with the old-fashioned stool bucket. And then they ran, and then, starting with that, or the
One-legged stool.
and then, an average guy was responsible for 5, 7, 10 cows, and sit there a deck, and juicing cows that way. And then they put it into the milk cans like that, but some of the old farms had, and I still remember them, looked like bathtubs. Am I right, Waylon? They stored those cans in cold water, and it looked like a bathtub in the milk house. And
They would concrete
concrete, like a bathtub looking thing, but it was square.
Yeah, and then
We
they
did
run
fill it with
cold
cold water
in there
out of the
to
ground.
cool the milk down.
And cool the milk down, then, so they took the edge off of it until it could be picked up by the, you know, the wagons and stuff like that. And, then brought into the dairy, as far as that goes. And then, of course, then later on, then you got into the stainless steel tanks, the bucket milkers, the pipelines, and stuff like that with the stanchions, the tie stalls and stuff like that.
Who was the last farmer around here to milk cows? When did you quit milking?
2002.
2002.
Dad was 2004.
Melvin quit in 91, the year that I graduated from high school.
Ollendorf's are still doing this.
They're the
stuff.
last ones.
Mark Hansen was a little bit after that.
I got a few names here, yeah.
Yeah, really, did quite a few.
Well, let me ask you the $64,000 question.
Oh,
The cow of 1890 gave out how many gallons of milk compared to the cow of 2019? I mean, all the improvements they made.
1890, the average cow was probably about 4,000 to 5,000 pounds a year. Now they have herd averages, like 32, 34, 36,000 pounds per cow a year. Based
That's
on,
interesting.
yeah.
I'm trying to throw you a question I can stumble on, but you got the answer.
Yeah, a lot of those big dairies, but during the total mixed ration, constant feed in front of them, because, you know, like most of our cows around here, we milk twice a day, most of them are now milk 3 times a day for feed production. You didn't use a lot of pasture, stuff like that. Winter time, the new dairies have water to feed constantly from them. They have sand down for bedding soft. The comfort of the cow is utmost and the health. You know, and unfortunately, you didn't have the genetics. Genetics played a big part. The introduction of AI, artificial insemination, that you could get the top producing bulls into your herd naturally. And bring those
I got animal husbandry as one of the topics here, so that's kind of what we're talking about now. That the milk production is based on the reproduction process of the calf.
breeding for genetics.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, how many of you have been out to Fair Oaks Farm? I've never been there myself, but that's quite an operation, I hear. All right, let's see. Who are some of the, I'm gonna hit 2 topics here. Veterinarians, Nadler is Nader or Nadler?
Naylor and Sands were out here.
that was the main 2.
Doc Galvin?
Doc Galvin was one of the first original. Did Doc Flim do dairy at all?
You know if Dr. Lim did anything with
No.
dairy cattle?
Sanders and Naylor was the only 2.
Naylor was one of the first, well, not first ones, but the standby for about 30, 40 years in Sands out of Vietnam. Doc Galvin, huh? No, out of Vietnam.
Is it Nadler? Is that the name?
Of that?
Jim's.
Oh, it might have been relations.
Or the draw Sanders.
His son still has his own animal hospital, Jay, but they were one of the few dairy.
There was also a Vasky from Beecher who was not certified, but he went out and did work for sick cattle. That was way in the beginning when I was little.
Some of you guys that are dairy farmers probably had to deal with the dreaded milk inspector. Any stories about that? Even you commercial guys, that was a big deal to have a milk inspector out there.
They still do.
There was a combination of both at the time.
Veterinarian and inspector?
Yeah, there was a lot of issues between them back in the day.
They sometimes showed up on a schedule, sometimes they just showed up out of the blue and inspect everything. If you had a little millstone, a little residue in there, she'd write you up.
Yep.
There was one lady that wasn't a nice.
Sanders was one of the inspectors back then. She was a problem. And there was
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
Sandra.
Sanders.
Yeah,
Because
she
I
was
was
a little
looking at
nasty.
information, so yes.
One of the Molly daughters was married to a milk inspector.
Is that a conflict of interest?
Inspector Meyer.
I know he worked at the plant all the time, but I don't think he was a
Johnny Meyer,
licensed.
John's father.
I don't know what you're talking about, Lord, you know. Didn't do that.
Yeah, they used to come over unexpected, sometimes you were, either you were milking cows, or after you're doing something, or after the chores, the inspector would come up, like what David Bosch just said, they did that constantly. When I worked with Melvin Meyer, or with Ione's husband, Martin and Paul, they came out of nowhere, and they started complaining about stupid stuff half the time.
Your whitewashing your barn wasn't.
Well,
Yes, they complain about that
Yeah,
during the
yeah.
winter time.
Everybody had to whitewash their barn once a year to, well, for sanitary reasons. They fired the line to help keep germs down and stuff like that. Plus also, every tank that you shipped, when they milked the truck picked it up, they took a sample out, bagged it in a plastic bag, put it on ice in their truck, and every load was tested for bacteria, butter fat. That's how you got paid.
Yeah.
You got based on 3.5% butter fat, and if it was plus, you got a bonus, minus, and then if your bacteria or it was something, I forget, it
I know
was
you're
bacteria
talking about.
count started reaching up to a certain level, she would come out and try and find out if you had some dirty equipment or if you were doing something wrong. And if you continue that after warnings, then you might have to go to the grade B truck. Grade B truck was more of a cheese milk scenario rather than.
The grade A.
Right, less pay for that too.
And you got less pay, you got about $3 a hundred less.
So we've talked about a number of things here. I want to get back to the milking parlor here. One of the first milking parlors around here was Paul and Martin Hemker. I told you how they gradually built a roof over their cow yard, and then they put a feed bunk in there, and put a roof over that, and they built a silo and, you know, ran the silage out into the feed bunk. And then, how many silos you got out there? I own like three silos. So they were a growing enterprise out there. And I think, maybe in the 60s or something, they built a milking parlor. These two guys, two brothers, they built a milking parlor right off of their cow lot, where the cows would come up a ramp and go in. They walk into a stanchion along the wall, they get washed off, feed would automatically come down in front of them, and then they'd milk the cows, and that was pipeline milking. The milk would actually get vacuum forced into a cooler tank there. And to see these two guys build this by themselves, I don't know how many, did they hire anybody to do any of the work I own? Nope. Those guys did their own mechanic work on their machinery. Those guys were something else. They're inspiration to me, I'll tell you that.
This new thing on farmers now is robotic milk, where they go in, the cows go in by themselves, get milked, and they go out by themselves at any time of day or night. They just, all you have is a smartphone, and if the red light comes on, you gotta go, there's trouble. If this isn't, you don't have to come home.
I'll bet you the cows know when it's milking time just as well as the farmer.
They go in 3-4 times a day as opposed to twice normally.
Yeah.
That's a new thing now. It's around $250,000 for one, the milk, for one cow, and I think that'll probably handle maybe 20 cows.
My daughter lives up in Wisconsin. We go up there, and boy, there's a lot of dairy farms up there. That's that cheddar curtain that goes down the state line there. So they got a lot of dairy business still up there, unlike us. We got Fair Oaks Farm, that probably covers the whole Chicago area almost.
No, actually, that milk goes mostly south.
Really?
Kroger.
So we get ours from Wisconsin.
There's a lot of that gets shipped around. But Fair Oaks basically supplies Kroger. Most of the milk gets shipped to almost Georgia or Florida. In insulated trucks, they're going to, like you said, when it leaves there, it's 34 degrees, and they'll drive all the way to Florida, 1 degree.
Wow. Who's in the mood for an ice cream cone? My dad
Society treating?
Is that a
Historical
He thought he was going
Society
to get a
treating?
glass of milk or something.
Treating for ice cream.
Okay, I think we covered most of the topics on the top half there. I just want to mention some of the families local here that have been, and they're alphabetical as far as, I think I made one mistake alphabetically. There's a Batterman farm. Is there anybody from Batterman here tonight? There we go. Did you get my phone message? Or did Dave call you?
My grandmother was a Batterman.
Okay. And you lived out on Bemis Road and Clemmy out in that neck of the woods?
Bemis Estate Line is the farm that started in 1852.
1953.
When the battery became cool.
Yeah, that's about the same time John O. he got here, so they might have come over on the same boat together, you never know. Okay, so Battermans and then Beckers. Your dad also had dairy cattle, I believe. And Roger, you spent some time milking the cows. So that's what Wendy told me anyhow. I remember, and that was out at Munce Road in Cottage Grove?
Yes.
Okay, good.
State line, State Street. On the corner there with the turn.
Okay, okay, all right. Chuck Johnson and I were driving out there one time, and your dad was out in the barnyard. We drove by, and there was something burning on the grass. I don't know if he'd spilled some fuel, and it caught fire. So we pulled in there quick and stomped out the fire in the grass there, so I remember that. I don't think it was going very far, but we made sure it didn't. Drolleys, that's another family. Anybody from Drolleys here tonight? They were out on what, Old Loney Road and Sangamon roughly?
Out of Valley.
Okay, yeah, dairy cattle there. Hempkers, we've talked about, Martin and I own, and Paul and Lois Hemker. There's another Hemker farm over on the west end of town. That was brother and sister to brother and sister, two different families connected there. And I was going to mention something about cooling milk there. They didn't get electricity at their house till 1950, and they lived that lifestyle.
Gus and Anna Hemker.
Yep, Gus and Anna Hemker, and they had a windmill there that pumped water, and that went probably about 60 yards to their milk house where they had to get cool water to keep the milk cool as they stored it. And then that also filled up a big outdoor water tank, I guess, made out of wood. He had, I don't know, he might have had a couple dozen cows, I don't know how many he had. I got part of his stanchion. And I was gonna bring it tonight, but it probably wouldn't fit up here to get it up here, probably would have fallen apart. But it was interesting, it's all wood, and you know, the cows go in there because they know there's some feed over there, so they slam the sides of the stanchion closed so they couldn't get their head out, and then there was a mechanism that latched to keep the thing from pushing over, and then that stanchion had another little latch to keep that one from unloosening so the cow could get out. So a lot of woodworking there, a lot of creative stuff for holding cows. I see another Hemker over there, so. Right? Dean? Is that Dean over there? Who's the guy in the black hat, the socks hat?
Me?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah.
No, I'm with the Beckers.
You look like a Hemker to me.
Well, farm.
How come you're not this way?
I'm just here for the ice cream.
Hey, all you gotta do is wait till Saturday, it'll be open. You can be first in line. Hoffeldt was another family that did milking. Any Hoffeldts here?
It was Old Money.
Old Money and Nacky Road, yep. And who was across the street from there? That farm place is long vacant. There's Ligursky's over there?
Ligursky's, but they never built a house. Ligursky's.
Okay. Haynes, that's Dave's grandfather. He had dairy cattle.
On Burville and 394, that's where.
Oh, the tire store used to
Where
be?
the tire stores.
Okay, okay. And then just the next farm west of there is Hanson's have that now. Their name is Hanson. And then you might see the guy out there training a sheepdog every once in a while. He's got livestock out there. And I don't know, they don't do any dairy cows anymore, I don't think.
No.
Hanson only did it for about 5-6 years.
Okay. And then Kramer, it's Bob and Phyllis here with the Maple Lane Dairy, so they were in the milk business. Meyer, Ray, you mentioned Meyer a few times, and they ended up buying that farm from John O'Keefenbrink in 1899, I believe. So they took over that farm.
Yes, I worked with both neighbors. I worked with Martin and Paul Hemker for 6 years, pipe winding. Then I converted over after they sold in '86. I worked with Melvin for 6 years before I graduated from high school, carrying milk towards the end. So I did a combination of both here, pipe winding and carry milk. So
I've had a couple people tell me they don't even want to see one of these things anymore. You see this
I
up
got a
here?
bunch of that stuff.
That's empty.
Yeah, that's a surge tank.
That's a surge
You
milk.
would take the milk and throw it over the top of the cow.
Right, there's
And
a
you
metal
hook it
rod
to
over the top
handle
of the
below.
cow.
And then there was bucket milkers, a lot of people had a bucket and
And you hang
a
that
vacuum hose.
over the collar and you.
Just keep it off the ground enough to let the milk go in there from vacuum.
And then the
This
bucket